So the Lord be with you.
And
And
also
also with you.
Let us
also with
pray.
you.
Almighty and ever-living God, ruler of all things in heaven and earth, hear our prayers for this parish family. Strengthen the faithful, arouse the careless, and restore the penitent. Grant us all things necessary for our common life, and bring us all to be of one heart and mind within your holy church. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
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 Amen. Amen.
Michael, I don't know that you need to show the document.
Okay.
It's just going to be an introductory thing, and so there's no content particularly. So, but
Okay.
if you want to, you can show. You're the
No, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start. This is a new series of foundational formations classes. And I'm the priest associate for foundational formation. So it's a good thing I'm talking about it. What we're going to do, and I need, this comes later in the handout. The handout's got one glaring mistake, which says that the next Wednesday is February 10th, which is not the case. It's February 3rd. But what we're going to do is explore and discuss the outline of the faith, which is commonly called a catechism, which is on pages 844 to 862 of the Book of Common Prayer. Okay. Now, the exploration and discussion actually will begin next Wednesday. What I want to do this evening is to do some introduction to the catechism and the way this series will be presented, because it's not going to be the usual, I'm going to teach content stuff and then stop and then start again with something else. This is probably going to go on through the spring of 2021, because there's 18 sections in the catechism. And what I found over the years is that you can do the subsections of those, you can do about 2 of them, and sometimes 2 whole sections. It just depends. But that would make a series that would be 9 or 10 weeks long. I don't think anybody is going to come 10 weeks in a row. So what the deal is it'll be 3 or 4 weeks, and then we'll take a break. The immediate break after these 3 sessions will be, I will probably do after these first 3 sessions, I will probably do the next session in Easter week because the Ash Wednesday is the 17th of February. So there's only 3 days between the last of these 3 classes and when Ash Wednesday starts. And there's a fantastic program planned for during Lent, which is, I think, going to be really exciting. So Missy's doing it. It's really exciting. So
Amen.
No, I'm really looking forward to it, but that's what's going to happen. Just the kind of word study thing is that the name catechism is derived from a Greek word catechizio, CATECHEO, which means to teach orally. Oral, it means it's oral teaching, in other words. The name catechism, that catechism is derived from that. No one is actually sure when catechisms emerged in the church, but it probably came soon after the Emperor Constantine promulgated the toleration of Christianity in the 320s AD, because once the royal family, especially his mom, demonstrated that they were Christians, then everybody thought it would just be a splendid idea to become a Christian. And what part of the church had to do with is that they had a three-year catechesis process for people before they could get baptized. And so they needed a simpler system, not a simpler system, but a simpler system, because nobody was being betrayed and put to death for being a Christian anymore. So one of the things that begins to emerge is something that looks like the kind of catechism that's in the back of the prayer book. The structure of catechisms is a series of questions followed by answers that people who desired to be baptized were required to memorize. Okay, doesn't it sound like fun? So there were questions and answers, and if you wanted to be baptized, you had to memorize the answers. Now, for a lot of us, depending on the age group that we're in, if we were Lutherans, we did that for 3 years before we could get confirmed, right? Not me. I was never a Lutheran, ever. But there was a long Catholic Church also had a catechism. A lot of churches did, and we did too. It begins sort of, I would say, probably began in the 17 or 1800s. No one's really sure about that either. But kids that wanted to be confirmed had to memorize the catechism, which leads to one of my favorite stories that my first bishop told me, Bishop Benison. He said, he said it was a real shock when you saw how young those children were that were being presented to be confirmed, because they were 10 and 11 years old. And the part of what we know now is the part of their brain that dealt with abstract thought wasn't really very well performed. But they memorized the answer. So the bishop comes for confirmation, and seated in a chair in the midst of the gathering, he calls on 2 or 3 children to come forward and be examined. Okay? So little Johnny comes up, and the bishop, with his mitre on and his crozier in his hand, he said, "Now, Johnny, what is a sacrament?" And little Johnny says, "An outward invisible sign of an inward and spiritual grace." And the bishop and Johnny's parents and everybody in the room, including Johnny, knew the bishop dare not go any farther than that and ask a question like, "What does that mean?" Because little Johnny didn't have a clue what it meant. So we have lots of people in the Episcopal Church that know all about the catechism and probably can repeat some of the answers, but they didn't learn anything. There was no content. So the good news is you don't have to memorize the answers in this class, okay? Because that's not what we're after. What we're after is helping you to make what's talked about in this catechism your own. So not only does it belong to the church as the whole body of the church, but also belongs to you, so that you can explain what the faith of the church is. Okay? And that's the whole purpose of it, was so that people would, whoever was being catechized, would learn the main parts of the doctrine of the church. And so this particular catechism, which is in this prayer book and is still in force, because the 1982 prayer book, or whatever it is, 679 or whatever, is still operative. There's been no new prayer book, and it gets reaffirmed. It's been reaffirmed a couple of general conventions ago. So the catechism is still in force, but it's designed to kind of open up the ground around the things that the creed teaches. Now, we can have a long discussion some other time about the fact that the creed is different than the catechism, because the creed is a substantial deposit of the Christian faith, which has been affirmed throughout the generations of Christianity. So there is something that we really, really honestly believe, which is why we recite it all the time, as a reminder of what it is that we believe. Now, the title that they're given to folks that want to be baptized, especially now adults that want to be baptized, is catechumens. Okay, it comes from the same root word as catechism. It's people being orally taught, and the structure of that oral teaching, along with the Sunday lectionary, is in fact the catechism in the back of the prayer book. What we're going to do, I hope, and what I look forward to doing is for us to explore and discuss the questions and answers, because that's a more fruitful way for adults to learn the basic doctrine of the Episcopal Church. There will be, at the end of all 18, though, a final examination, which if you fail, you have to double your pledge. So, nobody wants that to happen, right? So, no, we won't do that. The actual official title is An Outline of the Faith. It's on pages 844 to 862 of the Book of Common Prayer. Its purposes are to be educative. It's also there so that if someone who's visiting the church wants to know what is it that you all believe, you can open a prayer book and say, well, why don't we go through this? And that'll give you a good idea about what we believe. A lot of it's really stock Christian doctrine. Some of it's going to be really, really, really surprising when we get into it, because of the way things are stated. It's an amazing document. I think that it's something that people really don't know much about in the Episcopal Church, which is a shame, because it's a great resource. And so what my hope is that you will be a kind of core group of people who will have this understanding and information. And out of you can spring all kinds of things that will help the rest of the people in the congregation to learn. So aren't you excited? So here's how the educational process is going to take place. Okay. The next two classes will be presented on February 3rd and February 10th. Each class will explore and discuss at least two topical sections of the Catechism, probably not in their entirety. And what you need to know is that the structure of the Catechism sort of looks like the structure of the Creed, but it's not the best way for people, especially adults, to learn about it, because the exciting stuff comes from the middle to the end, and the kind of stuff that everybody gets yawny about comes up front. So, I don't want to drive everybody away in the first 7 or 8 sessions of it. So what's going to happen, what the structure is going to be, is that because there's so much important information contained in the Catechism with its 18 sections, the teaching will be presented in 3 or 4 consecutive weekly sessions followed by breaks. Okay, so that you're not on the hook for 9 sessions in a row or 10 sessions in a row, but we'll do a bit of it, and we'll take a break, and we'll come back and do a bit of it. And hopefully that people can return from the break fresh for what's going to go on. So that what will happen is that the complete exploration of all of this will undoubtedly continue into the spring of 2020 to 2021. I can never do that the right way. So, but as I said, there'll be breaks along the way. I was talking to Father Michael this morning, and he reminded me that you can divide a group up into breakout groups. And that's really exciting. I was really excited because that's the perfect way to learn this stuff, is to learn it in small groups, where people can dialogue with one another. And what's going to get presented as the handouts is I'll present the sections that we're going to talk about in the handout, unless you want to haul your prayer book there every time, or have it, at hand every time. And then there'll be some questions that are the Phillipses here?
No, John.
Okay, good. Well, they're gonna watch it because they taught me some. They're both educators, and they taught me some interesting stuff about how you teach a group, the kinds of questions that you ask. And so I was just going to give them credit. So there's some very interesting ways of asking some questions. So there'll be, 2 or 3 questions on the page sections.
So, John, you just faded there. I'm going to have you repeat.
So hopefully,
what you said.
Okay, I held up my hand over my face. I said it will be there will be questions, and so the handout sheets I'm going to try to make sure that they're going to be able, Michael and Melody are going to be able to get them out at least a couple of days, get them out by Monday, so that you can download them and print them out and look at them before you come. So they'll be on the website, as will the classes be on the website. So if you can't physically make it on Wednesdays, the stuff will still be there. And I hope that that you'll follow along. I just want to say a couple of things about breakout groups, so that so we can avoid some of the pitfalls. When you're in the breakout groups, I want you to banish from your vocabulary the words right or wrong. Okay, this is not a rule book. Okay, the Catechism is not a rule book. So what I would like you to substitute for right and wrong is agree or disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm right, you're wrong. I disagree, and probably you're going to say you disagree. And then you can talk about what it is that you agree or disagree about. But let's not talk about right and wrong. Haven't we had enough of that in this culture? I'll tell you, it's we don't need to do that. And the truth of the matter is, in theology, everybody's a little right and a little wrong. There are some things like the creeds that that they're pretty right. The church has said for centuries that they're pretty right, but that's not the point. The point is, what we're trying to get people to do is to think about what it is that the church believes. And so one of the questions, the overarching questions that's probably going to appear on every one of the handout sheets is, what is the church trying to teach with what it says? With the answer it gives to the question, and what is the church up to? Why? What is it that they want you to understand? They don't want you to memorize the damn thing. They want us all to come to some understanding. I promise you, if you all stick with this for the whole time, you're going to be amazed at how much you learn. Okay. And not only that, you're going to start talking like you know something, and other people are going to want to find out about it. Mm-hmm. It really is. It really is an incredible experience. This catechism is an incredible experience. So Oh, geez. Okay. Familiar. This isn't going to take very long, so I don't know. We're going to have to tap dance or something. Familiarity with the content of the Catechism through guided exploration and discussion is a fundamental foundational formation for Episcopalians, leading to the ability of all Episcopalians to explain to others what we believe. For all Episcopalians to have the ability to explain to others what we believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could have huge parishes if we knew how to explain to other people what we believe, and that's not a priest's task alone or a deacon's task alone. It's all of us. Because people say, well, what is it you Episcopalians believe? Catholic light, right? Ha, 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 ha. You know, no. Yeah, well, we are Catholic light in some ways, but no, we should be able to tell people what it is we believe. You know, that people go, wow, I may want to talk some more about that because she really understands what it is that she believes. What that to do with breakout sections is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. Michael's got a randomized settings, so every time we meet, you'll probably be with a different group, which is great because this is also a community building experience. Because it's about a community that knows what it believes, which is indomitable. I mean, really, it is. It makes everything easier. It makes liturgy easier. It makes parish polity and government easier. It's just, you're springing out of a baseline of what it is that everybody believes. So what we're going to do, what I hope you'll do is bring, along with your printout sheet, well, you're not going to bring it, you're going to have it, and have some paper there and have somebody be the clerk, or since we're Anglicans, the clerk of the group, and write down what it is you discussed, and if there were any questions or comments that people wanted to have me and Michael understand, and so if the deal is if you have a question and you don't want to ask us, you can do it privately, or you can not have your name mentioned. We don't care about that, but what we want is the question or the comment. We want to be able to process that in the plenary session with the group, because that's how people learn. They learn by that kind of dialogue back and forth. The other thing that I think is important about breakout groups is people have different learning styles. And some people sit and listen and listen and listen, and then they go home and they process it. It's not because they're shy, it's because that's the way they learn. So if somebody's just sitting there, don't bug them about participating, okay? I mean, because probably what they're going to go do is think a lot about it. And then if they have questions or comments that they want to make after that, I'm going to try to open every time with a time for those questions or comments. Class. And then that way they'll get the chance to ask their questions, but they don't have to produce it instantly. Mm-hmm. The other, I guess the last thing is, pray God no one will dominate the time of the group. That you ever no one, it's always the facile speaker, who falls in love. I do that, so that's how I know about it. I fall in love with the sound of my own voice, and nobody else is saying anything.
Mhm.
So it's let's do good community stuff, That nobody's right, nobody's wrong. We may agree or disagree fervently, but nobody's right, nobody's wrong in these classes. Okay, and you let people do whatever learning style that is natural to them and works best. Because what I've found out over the years is if you let the people that need to process, then they come back with really good stuff. They come back with good questions or good comments. So the bottom line is this is not going to be old John, talking head for an hour. It's going to be a communal thing. I'll be here to help and hold your hand. And when you read one of those sections that you can't believe they actually said that in the prayer book, we can talk about it, and you can talk to me about it privately. But so. Anybody have any comments or questions? Because that's kind of it, folks. That's what's going to happen.
Any questions? So I was thinking about Barbie and G.I. Joe dolls today, which I typically don't think about Barbie.
Is it a confession, Father? Because we can stop.
No. This is not typically something that I think about, but I was thinking about Barbie and G.I. Joe dolls in relation to the faith, because one of the reasons that I am a Christian is because the more I think about or question or enter into this mystery of God becoming flesh, and not as a warrior king, but as a baby, is that it is like a room in which the further I go in, the bigger the rooms get. It's this crazy thing of all the questions open up wider and wider and wider and become more spacious and generous. And I was thinking, if someone spent their lives manufacturing and selling Barbie and Ken dolls and G.I. Joes, at a certain point, you could pretty much know everything there is to know about producing and selling those dolls. But you can't with Christianity because it endlessly opens to new ideas and new possibilities, and that's why we need theologians through time, because if it was exhaustible, you just basically have this, everyone would know everything there would be to know about Christianity.
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
Well, and one of the things is about what you're going to discover. I promise you, you will discover that the information that you're going to get from this opens up a new kind of theological reading for you. You can start reading things that have some of that kind of content because you'll have that content. And one of the things about Christian theology that's really the dominant philosophical system, the way people think about things, changes. Okay? And what the church has been able to do is keep the principal stuff of the theology that really matters, but to present it and interpret it in a way that's like the philosophy of the time in which you live. That incredible flexibility of the basics of the faith it starts all the way with bread and wine and water. This stuff it's flexible enough to grow and change, and it isn't all written down in a book somewhere. And God said it, I read it, and that settles it. That isn't what it's about. And so you learn a new language, you learn a new thought form. Suddenly you have a set of competencies with your deeply held religious faith that are brand new and are real exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I was a theology major in seminary, the only one in my seminary class. And there wasn't one for 3 years before me or 3 years after me, because nobody could imagine anything more boring. But it gets real exciting because there's these guys that are called speculative theologians, which they say all kinds of crazy things. And you have to work it out and say, gee, do you think I believe that?
Yeah.
One of the
Any
reasons I'm
questions?
Episcopalian is because we can have discussions like this. Back in the Baptist church, you don't question whatever. And there's a very narrow path to salvation.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the more you can explain something to people, the more interest they have in it. And say those things. They're either rigid or they're secularized, one or the other. Which the thing about secularized is, oh, gee, we have a great couples group, and we do this and we do that. It talks about programming. People, Episcopalians, talk about programmatic stuff, or staff stuff, where now hopefully you all are going to develop a new vocabulary and a new thought form, and hopefully you'll get excited. By God, I'll make you excited. I'll get you so pumped up you don't know what you're doing. I tell you, this is great stuff. It really is. It's not Sunday school religion. It's great stuff. It covers all of life. And the Catechism lays a lot of that out. So, anybody else before I get too excited anybody else have any questions or comments about what's going to happen?
This is Missy, and I wrote in the chat that each time you go through the Catechism, you learn something new. You get confused on a higher level, but
that's right.
Like you said, it opens up your reading much differently. You can read, Thomas Aquinas after you've gone through the Catechism, and you can understand what he's saying. You can read the book of Romans and follow it much better after you've done the Catechism.
I was going to say, does that include putting commas in?
They didn't write with commas.
That's
okay, right. I keep telling you that, Deb. They didn't use punctuation marks.
I thought that was just Paul.
The original run-on sentence.
Oh, hey, Hebrew doesn't even have vowels, so there you go.
Well, it does, but they look like hen scratches. Every jot and tittle, Yod and tittle. So I don't know whether I have excited you or put you to sleep, but
I grew up with the Baltimore Catechism, and when you were reciting the little boy's response, it just came back. It all came back, that whole thing. Instituted by Christ to give grace, all those things. And I didn't know what I was saying. I was just memorizing it. And so interesting to see a different side of what we're going to learn.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of similarities. I mean, the Baltimore Catechism and the catechisms that have been used in Anglicanism are not all that terribly different. I mean, they're not. But we're also not confirming 10-year-old kids anymore in the Episcopal Church.
Yeah.
How old were you when you were confirmed, Canon John?
I was baptized, man. I was a Baptist then. I was adult baptism, or sort of adult. I think it was.
John, how old were you when you were immersed?
13.
So I was 12.
Okay.
Hmm.
I was 12.
I'll tell you what, I will go to my grave saying, out of all the things that I disagree with about that kind of evangelicalism, what they did to me represented what was happening to me spiritually much more clearly. Okay. I mean, they clapped a cloth, a towel over your face, and literally dropped you in the water.
Right.
And you came up sputtering, and then they dropped you in the water again. And so you died. I mean, you drowned. I thought it was pretty potent myself. So
Yeah, that's the Baptist way.
yeah.
Full immersion.
Well, for all of that, I found it very spiritual. I did. It's one of the few things in the Baptist church that I did find spiritual.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that I walked down the street to the Episcopal Church. But it was an experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus was immersed in the water, and it was quite an experience. And the folks that are able to go down to an actual body of water and be immersed,
Yeah.
I envy them. I do. I think it's
You die and rise again.
It's not necessary, but it is an experience that's transcendent.
2 summers ago, Anna and Eleanor Hughes were baptized in Lake Washington, one of the last ones that we've had. And I got to hold them as they went under the water. What an experience that was for me to observe this. And, they were probably 10 and 11, I think.
Mm.
Father McKay took the youth group, I believe, and they were baptized in Lake Washington. And we went and we stood there and we watched as he backed into the water in his vestment. Who else was here for that? Connie, were you here?
No, I was not. I attended the one Missy was talking about, though.
Yeah, there were several people that Father, and I forget why it was that he did that specifically. I think that's what they wanted. I think there were a group of young people and they wanted to be baptized in water. And so it was Lake Washington. And we all went down and we all watched and everyone came out very, very wet. But he dipped them, I think, at least twice, as I recall.
Twice or 3. The Orthodox.
Maybe it was 3 times. Maybe it was 3 times.
Yeah. The Orthodox baptized babies, they, the baptismal font is quite deep, and they actually put the baby under the water and bring the baby back up. So
Is there a canonical number of times? I mean, I
3.
remember 3.
Okay. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So then it had to have been 3 then. Because I remember those words.
Because when you pour the
like-
water, when you pour the water on.
Yeah, you do.
Does anybody know why you pour water on the forehead of somebody being baptized?
For the same reason that you anoint on the forehead?
Which is?
I don't know.
It's the center of consciousness.
Oh.
It's the
Seems
center.
to be on your heart.
Yeah.
Father McKay used to say that if all it took was being, immersed in water, he would rent a fire truck, bless the water to make it holy, and go and drive down Main Street in Kirkland and spray everybody.
That's all it took. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. We all can talk about it. That's sort of it. I wanted to make sure that we got a chance to, for an introductory thing, so that we all have some idea of what we're doing.
How many are in a breakout group?
I have no idea.
We can-
we have to ask Michael how it works. I don't know how it works.
We just between 4 and 5, we divide up the group.
So
Yeah.
one person has to be the note taker.
Yeah. So
They break
So
out
they can
groups as
report
you
back.
need.
does everybody know how to chat? Because this is one of the ways that you can ask questions, and you can ask questions to single people or to the whole group.
No, I don't know how to chat.
Okay. So at the bottom of your screen, why don't we just take a couple of minutes and we can do this. At the bottom of your screen,
I see it.
do you see a little thought bubble with the word chat
Yeah,
underneath it?
I do. I do.
Okay.
Click on
Go ahead and click on it. And
Yeah,
what you-
little what?
Oh,
A little thought bubble. It looks like, a cartoon is talking.
so it's all the way at the bottom and it says chat.
No.
Move your mouse to the bottom of your screen, Adeline.
Adeline might have an iPad. Are you on an iPad?
Well,
I have an iPad.
it still has a
Yeah,
chat
it's-
option.
What did you say to do, Missy? Put what to the screen?
Move your mouse to the bottom of the screen. Is that how? Well, I don't have an iPad. Somebody's going to have to help her who has an iPad.
Yeah, I can see, I do not see that particular thing.
I'm going to look.
It might be somewhere else.
You have to click at the top.
well, Missy has a very profound statement. And
No, you see it.
More
yes.
confused?
each time you go through the catechism, you learn more, but are confused on a much higher level each time, it says. You said.
I have never gotten all the answers, no matter how many times I've gone through it. And believe me, I've gone through it a lot.
Missy, how did you get those words on that chat paper?
So on the thought bubble, you press the thought bubble and you'll find at the bottom of it, it says to everyone, type message here. So
Oh,
where
see?
you
So I could say hi.
you could
Yeah, just type hi.
Okay, there we
just
go.
type hi there.
Yeah.
and then hit
Okay.
return.
Enter.
Okay, there it is. All right.
Love
Okay.
that.
So there's a
And-
place where it says everyone,
Yep.
and there's names, so you can message someone privately, but it's only private, as in they are the only ones that see the message. But the people who are in charge of the meeting also see the message. So this is not just somebody's new haircut.
Oh, I see. On my iPad, if you go up to where it says more, okay, then when you click on chat, you get. Okay. Now here's my question, because if we're gonna do breakout groups and there's a group discussion, my experience is that you have a plenary session of all the groups where people say, here's what we talked about, here's a question we have, whatever, rather than having all these chats. I don't know how we will keep all of that straight.
So the question is, well, let me come at it from a different angle. The value of the small group discussion is not necessarily the generation of a report of the content. It is the actual experience of it's the actual experience. So one of the ways that we can get at this, and John, this is your deal, but one of the ways we can get at that is to ask, what was that like? And one or two people can share what that was like. And typically that's an open-ended enough question that someone will say, I hadn't thought about X, Y, or Z until so-and-so, talked about it.
Okay, and you're going to use the chat to do that.
I don't need to.
Did I?
Or rather than have somebody in the group say, this is what happened.
Yeah, I think people I think it's also, Karen, I'll call in just 1 second. I think it's really important actually for folks to not talk about what other people said.
Yeah, right.
But to just simply share, this is what if somebody said X, Y, or Z, I could really identify with that, or I hadn't thought about this before.
Okay, but how many people do we have right now?
24.
Okay.
23, because I'm on.
So if we did a
20,
breakout
26.
group, then we would call people back and we could ask some open-ended questions. And then we'd hope that there'd be at least one person from each group that could share on that. And then if you wanted to do another question for the group, John, then we send them back and they go back into the same groups they were just in. So it can flow back and forth.
It would be a variant of the group each night, not each session, correct? You understand what I'm trying to say?
So in a given evening, you would be with the same group the whole evening. The next week, it would be a entirely different group because it's randomized.
And John, this doesn't just happen through the chat function. It happens by dividing this Zoom meeting into sub.
But to have someone as a scribe is a good idea if a burning question comes up.
Right.
So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to create 6 groups. I'm going to send you to your groups. And then in a minute, I'm going to call you back. Okay?
Just to demonstrate.
To demonstrate. Karen, I'm sorry, you had a question. Forgive me.
Sorry.
You're going to have to turn off your iPad.
Yeah.
I've got it.
I muted you. Go ahead.
I tried to mute myself. Does everyone who has a tablet know how to get to chat? Did they figure it out?
Yeah.
No, Adeline doesn't.
Not.
Okay.
Okay. On my iPad Pro, if you move your cursor up to the top of the page, on the right-hand side, there's a little red ball and it says more. Okay, and if you press on the more, then you get a list of things that you can do: raise hand, chat, so on and so forth. So that's where it is.
Do you see that, Adeline? I'm going to have you unmute, hon.
Unmute, Adeline.
You're muted, Adeline.
I don't think she can unmute.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
What's your question, Adeline?
Pardon?
What's your question? Have you been following the directions?
I don't know what to do next to get on chat.
Okay.
What
So
kind
what?
of
Do you have an iPad, Adeline? Do you have an iPad?
But is it an iPad? Yes, it's an iPad.
Yes, you do.
Okay. So go up to the very top of the page. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And just press there, and then there's a bunch of things come down that say mute, stop video, share screen.
There is.
And then there's a little red ball that says more underneath it. And press that more thing, and a menu will drop down, and one of the things on it is chat.
Okay, got it.
Okay?
Oh, good.
Cool.
Okay.
Makes technology wonderful. When you know what to do with it.
When it works, yeah.
So I'm going to send you off into it. This will just be like a practice session, okay?
Okay.
And then in a minute's time, we'll bring you all back, okay?
Okay.
Just want to count how many we have. Okay, here we go. We'll see you in just a minute.
I'm in room 3. Okay.
You should see an invitation.
We were number one.
And we came back on time too.
Hi, Debbie.
Isn't that pretty interesting that you can do that?
Yeah. The one thing we have to remember to unmute ourselves, because I was muted. So I was talking, but they couldn't hear.
Oh, okay.
Can you?
But our group worked.
Yes, ours did too. So did Adeline get in the group?
She must have.
I don't know. We're missing half our people.
So actually, you all saw an invitation to come back. They could
Yes.
just be waiting for the minute to run out, and this is probably what's
Yeah,
happening.
5 seconds.
So here everybody is.
Oh, there we come.
Wow.
Work.
How'd that work for you, Adeline?
I can see you, Missy, but
No,
my,
Adeline, the breakout group.
Go into the room and see other people and then come back to the big group, yeah?
She did.
It's,
Yeah.
it's
So
pretty.
John,
Paula Copley, you're muted.
Paula?
Not that, Paula.
Paula Copley.
No, I know. I did that because
Okay.
we got back in and sometimes it's all wonky when everybody has their sound on. So I was
Yeah.
mute myself but yes, our group worked great.
Yay.
So Michael, the only question I have is when people have questions that they want answered, then that's going to take place apart. It's when we're all back together.
Yes.
People are going to ask the questions of me.
So what we would do is, and this is all up for, debate or sort of consideration. My thought is that you'd ask one question. Folks would be sent to their breakout rooms with this understanding that there'd be a certain time, and you would encourage each other to not dominate the time. Basically, everyone's got a couple minutes to answer this question, or you then have that process, and then folks could come back, and if they had a question, they could ask a question. If you felt that you wanted to ask it privately, you could simply go to chat and find John Ferguson, and you could ask John Ferguson the question, and John would say, okay, we have a question here, X, Y, or Z.
Remembering that Father Michael can see that chat as well, because he's running.
I mean, you're not going to be telling dirty jokes. I'm not worried about
We're going to be
you all
positive
coming.
about
Are you sure?
We got bigger problems than the Catechism if that starts happening. I got to tell you.
Okay, so what's going to happen is that we're going to go back and forth in the hour's time, or the hour and 15 minutes. We're going to go back and forth several times is what's going to happen.
Good.
Yes.
So one question at a time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll start all together and with kind of
And the other thing, so there are a couple of things that I find work really well. Is one, that when a person is sharing, you don't offer them advice.
Yeah.
You don't tell them that they're really being too negative and they just need to cheer up a little bit. Or that everyone, because that's a conversation killer. But if everyone has a few minutes or a few moments where they can say, for the first time I heard X, Y, or Z, I heard this. I really could see how Jesus loves not only me, but loves, all of creation. We just want to receive those from each other.
Yeah, no
criticism go ahead, Rainey.
Well, 24 hours ago at this very time, we were doing our NAMI support group.
Yeah.
And we always begin our NAMI support group, don't we, Adeline, with the guidelines.
Yeah.
We will maintain confidentiality. We will We will. Not about we won't. We will. And I think even though I can't tell you what all those things are, I think I do know them, and it sort of becomes inside of you. It's a guideline inside of you, really, so that when you go to group, you kind of know maybe some written words for us the first time.
Yeah.
A little process thing.
Yeah. The other thing is you all saw me send a chat to you, so I could send the guidelines when you got there, and you'd say, just a reminder, here are the guidelines for sharing. We just ask you to, help each other keep doing them. So it is, I'm sorry, I saw a couple of hands. Missy and then Rob.
So positive norms for a group. Ken and John already said a couple of them. And so we can figure that out in the next few days.
Yeah, great. Rob? Thank you, Missy.
I actually had a question, not a process question, but just a question. Some 20 years ago, I guess, I got slapped by the bishop.
Buffeted.
And I'm not sure at this point. I'm not even sure I remember what kind of preparation I went through. But my question is, what should I have gone through in preparation for confirmation by the bishop? Because I was baptized in a non-denominational Christian church by full immersion when I was 12. So by the time I got to St. John's, it was a question of confirmation. But I don't remember what I went through with Don McKay. What should I have been?
How old were you then? Were you an adult then?
Yeah, I was 40.
No, I'm serious. Let me answer the question by saying that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't want to get up. I don't want to.
Oh, go ahead.
We have done an abominable job in the Episcopal Church with education about things like what do we believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean we confirmed kids whose brains weren't developed enough to really understand that abstract part of what Christianity was about, and they retired from church. That used to be the joke. Well, little Johnny got confirmed and then he retired from church. I mean, so we haven't given people the skills and the information and the way to think about it and all of those kind of formative things. We haven't done it, and that's why we talk about social things, and that's why social and socializing. That's why we talk about institutional things, like we have a beautiful sanctuary, and I mean, because we don't have anything else to talk about. And Anglicanism lives so close to the culture. You can think about various forms of Christianity that get as far away from the culture as they possibly can. Anglicanism is right there. So it's very easy to fall over into a secular kind of understanding about what your church is about and not know any of this material. But thank you for saying that, because yes, that's why part of why we're doing this.
Great. Well, I look forward to the subsequent sessions then.
Cool. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rainey, and then Connie.
My question is probably out of place, but I have to ask you, Rob, why is your hair blowing?
It isn't. It's a background.
There's a gentle breeze here in the south of France.
I was wondering if there was some breeze in your kitchen or something. I don't know. It's just a phenomena that nobody else is experiencing.
That's because he's the only one that's using that background. You can get a background from
the background.
His hair is going in and out.
Fades in and out.
Oh, it's the background. Oh, thank you. See how much I'm learning.
Rainey.
Same technology, Graham.
And Connie and Rainey, there was no right or wrong in that. It's just what it is.
Rainey, I'm glad you said something because I was thinking the same thing, but I didn't want to embarrass you, Rob.
Oh, you couldn't embarrass me, I don't think.
So Connie had a question.
It
Connie?
was really not it was just kind of a continuation on what Rob was saying. I was confirmed at 11 and we used the old prayer book, and the catechism is about 6 pages long. I've been looking it up thinking, I don't remember all that in the catechism. And that's because that's all there was, and there's like 6 pages. So.
And I want to know about this buffeting. What is the symbolism of the buffeting?
The buffeting where the bishop slaps you on the face. It's to remind you that the world is not going to love you because you've become Christian.
Bishop Cochran did that.
That's the buffeting is the response you can expect from the world.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was confirmed by Bishop Cochran, and I can tell you that
He popped you, didn't he?
he was not really gentle.
He was with
Well,
me.
he's not. I
He
mean,
was with the girls.
He was very gentle with me. And I remember preparation for that. We did go through the catechism.
Yeah,
It wasn't a thoughtful, we'll discuss this. It was a presentation.
yeah, exactly.
Vincent never did. Bishop Sandy would put his hands on people's head and say, really hard, remember your baptism.
yeah.
Yeah.
Greg doesn't do either one of those, but he does wait and lets everybody focus on what's happening. And he asks, especially the kids, is this what you want to do? Because you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And he asks both the adults and the kids to write a letter.
I like that part of it.
I do too.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was like, I have to write a letter? Okay.
I mean, for me, that's like, if you were to sum up what Christianity is for me, it means I don't punch back.
Yeah.
And so this is like an object lesson. I mean, really like, oh yeah. You know, that we do not respond. We have the freedom to not respond as our instincts would tell us that we actually have a range of responses. And
I was confirmed by Bishop Pike in San Francisco.
Oh my God, you're still here to tell the tale.
Yeah, but I was confirmed as Jill, and my roommate Jill was confirmed as Adeline.
Oh, well.
Oh, funny. That's funny.
What can I say?
So let me ask, have any of you been reaffirmed? Ever
Yes.
reaffirmed your confirmation? Rainey?
Yes.
I have.
John did a couple of renewal of preparation for renewal of your baptism. I think one of them was we had a bishop visitation too. So.
that really we should be encouraging that. I was received into the Episcopal Church.
So was I.
And I remember that.
I grew up in the Church of Scotland.
Well, it's interesting because
that was very different.
Yeah.
The letter you're talking about, it's interesting because I think I couldn't have written a letter when I was confirmed, but I probably could now.
Well, that was Bob Cotton. Bob Cotton was the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do that.
I was baptized as a tiny child in the Episcopal Church, St. Paul's in Seattle. And then, I was a little tiny child, and then we went to classes. They were catechism classes. And I remember my first, after you go through that, I remember my very first Eucharist, and I was supposed to be guilt-free, right? And I'm a kid. I don't know, what was I, 12 probably? Was that when you got confirmed, maybe?
Mhm.
And I just remember being terrified. And I envied my Catholic friends because I hadn't had a chance to confess my sins. And I kind of lied and said, yes, I cleaned my room. reasonably certain while I had my hands out for the body of Christ that the whole church was going to be struck by lightning.
Yeah.
Oh, that's, I mean, we're laughing, but we should be crying.
But well, I suppose it was good for me because it always made me very nervous when my room was dirty. I don't know.
But Michael, you said you were received into the Episcopal Church. That's because you were baptized as an infant in the Catholic Church?
I was baptized and confirmed, and this was, so I became an Episcopalian shortly before I went into seminary.
Yes.
So,
because you were confused about the retreat, right?
Right.
yeah, that's right. So,
I haven't heard this story.
Go ahead, tell the short version.
I went on a retreat that I thought was a Catholic retreat house because good Catholic boys like me who didn't go to mass, but still a poor Catholic is better than a good Protestant. And I showed up at this retreat house that I thought was a Catholic retreat house in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming. And it turned out that they were an Episcopal retreat house. And I said, this is not for me. I mean, I didn't say this, but you were the people that like killed my Irish ancestors.
Oh, yes, there is.
I grew up with stories about the British soldiers killing one of my ancestors because he objected to their stabling the horses in the Catholic Church. They hung him for that. So, I mean, I've got ancestors that I got to look after. So I sure as heck am not going to. And there was no way for me to get back to Jackson Hole. And so she asked me to stay the night. And I stayed for a couple of nights and
then went to seminary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Michael, didn't you also say that she said, have you ever considered being a priest? I thought that was part of
That was part of the thing that, yeah. So I went through
the Epiphany.
She heard my confession, and then afterwards, she said two things to me, the vicar. She said, one, get over hating Protestants. Your family is up in heaven at the great banquet table, yucking it up with all the good Protestants. And you're doing nobody a favor by hanging on to some resentment or clan loyalty. And you love Jesus too much. And the other thing she said is, I think you're called to the priesthood. And when I was a little kid, that was the case. And I just said, let me think, sex or the priesthood? I was in 8th grade. Bad time to ask that question. Yeah.
Not much of a choice.
But I will say, go ahead.
My maternal grandfather was an Orangeman.
I picked up on that, John, just earlier when you talked about being a Scots, Scots Irish.
He owned a little grocery store and a coffee roasting business. And on St. Patrick's Day, he would hang orange bunting outside the store windows and wait with a ball bat for the first rock to come through the window.
Oh my God.
So he had a couple of nephews that, really liked to just give it to him. So he wanted some topsoil for his yard. And they were doing some construction work at the Roman Catholic Church, and they had a bunch of topsoil that they wanted to get. So they truck pulled up with the topsoil, and he was very grateful. And then one of their wives or their mother or somebody told him, she said, Jack, she said, do you know where that topsoil came from? He said, no, what? Where did it come from? Well, it came from, St. Albans down the street. You get those boys here and give them every damn teaspoonful of that papist dirt back.
It runs deep. It runs deep. And that's why God has such a sense of humor.
Except we kill each other about it. That's the...
Yeah.
I'm going to say good night.
Good night,
Rainey. Good night, everyone.
Time for
Good
Compline,
night.
Father.
Time for Compline.
Time for Compline.